Hello, I am Jacky, and today we're going to read chapter 3 of The Swoose, which is written by Dick Kingsmith. Dressed all in black, Queen Victoria stood at an upper window in Windsor Castle and looked down at the courtyard below. In the centre of this courtyard was a perfect square of brilliantly green grass, a lawn that was not only personally mown by the royal head gardener, but afterwards finely manicured by a number of under gardeners. No other feet were allowed upon this lawn, save those for the Queen's pet dogs and of the footmen who tidied up after them with an elegant brass shovel. But now it seemed there was a large shape right in the centre of the square of the green. The Queen held out a hand. "Our business," she said to her lady bedchamber, which was, "Pass me my glasses." And when they was brought, she fitted them to the bridge of the royal nose. For some moments she stared down, and then she said, "And what, pray, is that?" "It is a bird, ma'am," said the lady of the bedchamber. "We can see that," said Queen Victoria. "We are not blind. See that it is removed immediately. Whatever is it doing on our grass?" And she turned away from the window. The lady of the bedchamber heaved a sigh of relief that she had avoided having to answer the Queen's last question. She could plainly see what the bird had just done at that moment on the grass. "Oh, that's better," said Fitzherbert, as he waddled away from the large squelching mess he had just made. He was feeling pretty pleased with himself. Everything had gone swimmingly. He had swum on the Thames, keeping well away from the swans, and stopping every now and then to feed on juicy water plants. It was late in the day before he came to town, so he decided to wait till next morning before visiting the Queen. At dawn, Fitzherbert looked up at his looming walls and towers. "Oh, good job Swoose can fly," he thought, and he took off and flew up the hill. The town of Windsor was still asleep, and its streets were as empty of the busy horse-drawn traffic. Only a milkman driving his cart with a load of brass-bound wooden churns noticed a large bird fly up a castle hill and over the turrets of the King Henry VIII gate. This, Fitzherbert's second flight, was altogether a much more successful effort. Even so, he tired rapidly, and seeing a square of grass in an inner courtyard, he landed thankfully upon it. It was a crash landing that knocked the wind out of him, and for some time he lay and gasped for breath. Finally recovered, he looked about him. Then he saw a movement at the upper window. Someone was looking down at him. He could not see the figure, but it appeared to be dressed in black. "If that's the Queen," thought Fitzherbert, "I better make myself comfortable before I meet her." He stood up and suited his actions to his words. "Oh, that's better," he said, and waddled off slowly towards the nearest door. The lady of the bedchamber lost no time in contacting the Lord Steward of Her Majesty's household. "There's a large bird," she said to him, "in the Queen's private courtyard, and she wants it removed immediately." "What sort of bird?" asked the Lord Steward. "I don't know," said the lady of the bedchamber. "It was something like a swan, but then again, it was something like a goose." The Lord Steward of Her Majesty's household sent for the ornithologist, the man who looked after the Queen's birds. "There's a large bird," he said, "in Her Majesty's private courtyard. Come and get rid of it, will you?" "What sort of bird?" asked the ornithologist. "Part swan, part goose, apparently." "Part swan, part goose?" the ornithologist excitedly said to himself as he hurried to do the Lord Steward's bidding. Could it be true? Could it be? When the door of the courtyard opened, Fitzherbert was disappointed to see the man emerge. He seemed to be very nice, for he produced some pieces of bread which he offered to the Swoose. But no sooner has Fitzherbert began to eat them, he was grabbed his wings and pinned them to his sides, and he was carried, kicking and struggling away. It is, said the ornithologist, as he listened to the captive's cries of protest, a blend of the grunting bark of an angry swan and the cackling of an outraged goose. He carried Fitzherbert to the royal menagerie, where all manner of creatures were housed, presented as gifts to the Queen by visiting foreign rulers. It is, said the ornithologist, again as he feasted his eyes upon Fitzherbert, now shut in a large cage. I'd heard tales of such a bird, but never thought to see one. It's a swoose. That bird, said the Lord Steward of Her Majesty's household later. Have you dealt with it? Yes, said the ornithologist. What was it? It is a swoose, said the ornithologist. A cross between a swan and a goose. A rather avis. Indeed, Her Majesty should be told. The Lord Steward of Her Majesty's household remembered enough of his Latin to say to the lady of the bedchamber, it's a rare bird, the one that was in the Queen's courtyard, called a swoose, apparently. Her Majesty should be told. Nervously, for the Queen did not like to be told things, preferring that people should not speak until they were spoken to. The lady of the bedchamber approached her sovereign. Forgive me, Your Majesty, she said, but that bird that you saw earlier this morning. Well, said the Queen, her face set in its usual grim mode. I am given to understand, ma'am, that it is a swoose. A what? A swoose, ma'am. To the great astonishment of the lady of the bedchamber, something that might almost have been called a small smile appeared on the royal face. Never in all the years she had served at court had the lady of the bedchamber seen such a thing. A swoose, said Queen Victoria. Why, surely that must be part swan, part goose. Perhaps Your Majesty might care to take a look at the creature, said the lady of the bedchamber. We would, said the Queen. So it was that Fitzherbert, puzzled and angry at being shut in, saw the doors of the royal menagerie opened by a pair of bewildered footmen and a procession enter, followed by the Lord Steward, the ornithologist and the lady of the bedchamber, and attended by the Lord Chamberlain, the controller of Her Majesty's household, the master of the horse, and several ladies in waiting. Next came a short, dumpy figure dressed all in black. Some time, Queen Victoria stared at Fitzherbert without speaking. Naturally, no one else spoke. Then the Queen said, Are we right? Is this bird indeed half swan and half goose? Your Majesty is perfectly correct, said the ornithologist. And it is a rarity? Indeed, ma'am. We do not like to see it imprisoned. Open the door of its cage. But, ma'am, began the ornithologist, fearing that the bird might misbehave itself in some way, might even, dreadful thought, peck the royal ankles. Do as we say, snapped the Queen, and look sharp about it. And the ornithologist looked very sharp indeed. But Fitzherbert could, of course, understand nothing of the medley of sounds that the humans made. However, it was clear to him that thanks to the Queen, he was to be a prisoner no longer, and he thought that he should show his gratitude. With measured tread, he walked out of the cage and stood at attention before the Queen, then slowly uncurled his long neck and laid his head upon the ground at the very feet of the monarch, in a gesture that was the nearest he could come to a courtly bow. The amazement of the Lord Steward of Her Majesty's household, and the ornithologist, and the ladies of the bedchamber, and the Lord Chamberlain, and the controller of Her Majesty's household, and the master of the horse, and the ladies in waiting, and the two big-wigged footmen, none of whom recalled ever seeing such a sight before. Queen Victoria looked down at the Swoose and smiled broadly. "We are amused," said the widow of Windsor. Thank you for listening to Chapter 3. Please join me for Chapter 4 and subscribe to my channel.